My name is Jamie Rumsey. I'm the senior warden at Holy Comforter, and I'm here with Mike Shedd, your junior warden, and the Reverend Lyndon Shakespeare, your new rector. We're just going to have a quick conversation about stewardship today, what it means to us, how our theme fits in, and what stewardship looks like in a time of COVID at Holy Comforter. So we're glad you're here, and we'll just get going. So the first question that I have for you, Father Lyndon, is our stewardship theme that the vestry chose this year is doing a new thing from the verses from Isaiah. I'm wondering, how do you understand stewardship fitting into that theme? What does that mean to you?
Sure. Thank you. Great question. It's a great theme, right? God is doing a new thing. It comes from verses in Isaiah and was written at a time of Israel being in exile. Now, I want you to think about that for just a second. They were together as a people in a land and in a time that felt very foreign. Does that sound familiar? It does to me. We are, of course, perhaps in our homes a great deal, and perhaps we haven't moved, although some of us have. So in some ways, we are not very far away from our homes. But in other ways, this year has invited us to step into territory that feels still very foreign. So there's part of me that thinks about this theme and thinks about how we're in a kind of exile, an exile from truly being together, truly being able to share in the ebb and flow of parish life, in the ways that have sustained and continue to sustain us and will again sustain us. God is doing a new thing, the prophet tells the people. When I think about this in relation to stewardship, there's a couple of things that come to mind. First, there is the constancy of God. It's God who is doing a new thing. But God has always and will always remain the same. So even as we enter into this time, perhaps of uncertainty, or continue in this time of uncertainty, there is some constancy. And stewardship has a constancy to it. We know year to year, month to month, both the ministries and the mission of this parish continue. We know some things haven't changed. Holy Comforter remains a vibrant, dynamic, engaged, faithful community. That was true a year ago, and it's still true now. So some things do remain the same, and that I think is a reminder for us that stewardship, the way in which we share the generosity, share generously from what God has granted us, is something that continues to remain the same. But God is doing a new thing. And this new thing is unfolding in our midst in such a way that day to day, week to week, things don't always feel the same. And even if God is constant, things around us are shifting and changing. And so the kind of approach we take to stewardship needs to be agile. It needs to reflect the kind of world that we're living in. And that can mean both in terms of practical giving, that we place our trust in the constancy of God and recognize that new challenges and new joys await around the corner. That's the God who is constant, doing a new thing in our midst. And it's a source of encouragement for me. I wish I knew what tomorrow was going to bring. I don't. But I'm grateful that God does. And stewardship as an act of our faithfulness and trust in God places us back into that territory, even that might feel foreign. It's still territory that we can trust that God is still present and active. So that's what comes to mind.
I think from my standpoint, what I like about these verses and this theme is that it is a hopeful thing. This is certainly the biggest challenge, I think, one of the biggest challenges our country has faced in my lifetime, and certainly one of the biggest challenges the church has faced in terms of trying to find new ways of doing things. But I take comfort in knowing that this verse came from, as Reverend Shakespeare said, it came from a time of incredible stress. The Israelites were facing exile. They had been taken out of their own home and they were somewhere else, and yet they managed to hang in there and hang together. And I take comfort not just from that, but also from the history of the church. I mean, the early founders of the church, they didn't have it easy. And certainly the church through the ages, in terms of the Black Death and other large stresses on the entire Christendom, I think has been things that we've made it through. And so I have great confidence we'll make it through this. And like with any investment, I don't want to throw good money after bad. And I don't think this is throwing good money after bad to support Holy Comforter through this. I think the church is going to be here today, tomorrow, and the next day. And I have great faith in the future of this institution. That's why I'm continuing to support it.
The thing that I love the most about this theme is that it encourages us, I think, to have patience. I'm a mom, I've got kids, and my pace of life before COVID was breakneck. And everything had to be decided now, and we had to move on to the next thing and the next thing. And COVID hit, and the pace of life changed a little bit, and everything had to slow down. And we're used to having answers right away, and we're used to knowing, what's coming next, and we're used to being able to see things coming, and all of a sudden we can't anymore. And that feels very uncertain and very foreign to us, I think. And the thing I love about this verse and this theme is it reminds us to be patient, that God is doing a new thing. And even though we don't know what it is yet, and we can't tell what's coming, it's there. And if we're paying attention and we're intentional and we look, then we can see little glimpses of what might be happening. Relationships are changing. We're learning how to use this technology in good ways and new ways and do different things with it. And I think we have to be patient, but you're right, just stay the course and trust God that new things are unfolding, even though we can't see what they are yet. And stewardship is a part of that, because we don't know how every penny is going to be spent when we give it to anywhere. But we can trust that it will be spent for God's purposes. And we're investing in what it is that God is doing new when we give money to the church. And that's the reason that our family is continuing to support Holy Comforter. It's not because we know exactly what's going to happen, but we know that it's in God's hands.
So the next question is, Father Lyndon put out there what stewardship means in the time of COVID. And I think the next question is really, how has it changed in the time of COVID? And I think I will start by giving my own answer to that. And I think it's changed a lot in the sense of how we approach it. And when we began the stewardship campaign, I started by calling a bunch of people, ministry heads who had particular interests in particular areas of church life. And I asked them just to tell us about, how you have adapted to this environment. And I think the stewardship videos you've been able to watch on the website have given some indication of how people have changed and how they've adapted to this era. And that's really what stewardship is. It's giving your time, your talent, and your treasure to support the church. And I think those videos are a pretty good indication of where people have been and how they've tried to present themselves in this new age and continue to lead the church in an environment that is clearly foreign to all of us.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I couldn't agree more. The videos and the ministries really do highlight what we invest in when we pledge and provide our support and invest in this community. One of the terms that's making its way around the church with regards to stewardship in this time is holy agility. This sense of both adaptability in terms of as new things arise, but also that sense of agility that allows us to kind of move in these new spaces with as much confidence as we can muster, but with the kind of hope that Jamie was speaking of, that a hope and trust in God, that whatever is unfolding before us, God's got this. In terms of stewardship in COVID, I'm reminded too of something that we often probably talked about prior to COVID, and that is how important relationships are to a community. How central they are that we are able to connect with one another. And yes, being in spaces, digital spaces like this, are not necessarily everyone's ideal. They're certainly not mine. But they have opened up a way of connecting and opened up streams of connection, both with people we know and people we don't, that have often allowed us to actually know our community better in some ways. Now, having said that, the other thing that's often noted around stewardship campaigns are things like buildings. Think about it. How much more important has the church as a physical presence in the community meant now that we can't access it as much? Think about your favorite pew. I mean, your pew, not just your favorite pew. I mean, your pew, where you sit. Think about the windows that capture your imagination during a liturgy. Think about the sound of the organ, the feel of the organ as it reverberates through your very bones. And I would challenge us all to think about next time we say, well, the church is only the people and not the buildings. There's a good truth in that. But think of how important the buildings are and continue to be. I know for me, when I drive down 287 and turn on 10th Avenue, the very physical presence of Holy Comforter, though empty, is still a reminder who we are. It says something about the very nature and character of this church, of this community. We still want to invest and support the buildings, the staff, all the aspects of our common life. So this COVID moment has certainly perhaps deepened our awareness and appreciation of connecting. But I hope it hasn't also taken away the importance of places, of those physical places that mean so much, that communicate so much to us. And so while COVID has certainly, changed so many things about how we think about stewardship, I hope it's helped us also to get clear about the importance of who and what and where we are as a community and how crucial that is, not only to our own life of faith, but also to the broader community.
Yeah, it's been interesting to trace, to watch Holy Comforter's expenses and budget. That's one of my jobs. And so Kurt, the treasurer, and I have been doing that very carefully for a lot of months, as you can imagine. And one of the things that we have discovered is that when the church is totally closed down, we've been able to save some money on things like utilities, and copy paper and coffee and things like that. And we thought that, gathering back in person on the lawn or opening the office back up would not really take that much more money to do. But what we've discovered is that keeping that building and that special place even a little bit open is pretty much as expensive as keeping it entirely open. And we're not really saving that much money by only being partially open. But the flip side of that is because we're not completely open, we don't have rental income. and we don't have plate giving particularly, and some of those other sources of income that we rely on. And so the pledges that people have made and paid in 2020 and the gifts that they have given have let us keep taking care of that building so it will be there when we come back. But we don't know when that is yet. And so we're really going to rely on pledges in 2021 to being able to keep taking care of the building and keep paying the staff that is leading us through this, and that is doing everything from dusting and wiping things down in the building to sending out emails to answering the phone to, you know, meeting the HVAC guy when they knock on the door. And so even though we're not in the building, that's still costing money. And that's just a reality of stewardship in this time, that income is down and expenses really aren't down as much as you would think. You know, the office staff will tell you we've turned the heat down and we're doing what we can. But that unfortunately is a reality of stewardship in the time of COVID. Is we still need money to keep the place going so that when we all come back to it, it's still in good shape and it's loved and it's cared for.
So thank you for those who have pledged. And if you haven't yet, please do so. It really does make a difference based upon our experiences, based upon your own experience. It's a sign of trust. A sign of trust that whatever this new thing God is doing, it's worth investing in. And I soundly believe, and I'm very confident that you believe that as well, that God is up to something at Holy Comforter and we want in on it. And this is an important way in which we express that. So thank you.
Thank you.